One. Hi there. You're watching and listening to Sipping Off the Cuff on Tequila Aficionado Media on all of our channels and networks. I'm Mike Morales here in sultry San Antonio, and that gentleman out there is
Jim Johnston in Youngstown, Ohio.
Jim and I. I couldn't not be happier because Jim and I are dissecting and tasting El Diamante del Cielo. I put on my Univision voice for that.
Sabido Gigante.
Not to be confused with the other Cielo. This is the second coming, the resurgence of this brand. If you joined us for the Blanco, the silver tasting, I told a story. This comes from 1472, which is the NOM number. It is Fábrica de Tequilas Finos. It was the first fábrica that I walked into, and outside of the Jose Cuervo fábrica, which I think I can't remember. It was kind of hazy with that was the second or third day anyway. But this was
everything's kind of hazy after Cuervo.
Yeah, well, especially after so many years. But it was one of the first distilleries that was, if not the first, that we ever walked into. So I'm excited because this is the resurgence, the second coming of this brand. Last I saw it, it was at a Costco in New Mexico, and it looked a little bit different. But when I saw the brand on Instagram and saw it was coming back, I was really happy with that because I remember how good that Blanco was, and I'll be honest, if I had the Repo or the Añejo, I can't remember. So I'm kind of looking forward to what you have to say about it. Let's see here. Oh, nice bubbles. Wow, did you see that? Holy cow, man.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot of bubbles, folks. You know how I love bubbles. Wow.
It's still going.
Yeah, wow.
The champagne of tequilas.
Careful. I used to call one that years ago. Another brand, highly touted and sadly now gone. But anyway, so this is Diamante del Cielo, and we're going to pour it, and then we're going to taste it. Jim, what was it you told me off camera? It was something about the aging that this Repo is doing, that they're doing.
Yeah, the point of sale information says that it's aged up to 364 days, which is one day before it's got to be called Añejo. So
wow.
They let it go as long as it can go as a Repo, and that's why we get, I think, a little bit of the darker coloring on this.
Well, I think we noticed too that the foil, the labels on the back, kind of tend to add a little bit of more color when you would see it on the shelf, because the plata, the silver, has a blue. It's a blue background on the inside foil of the label, and this one is gold. So
And I was looking at the liquid that I had in the neck of each one side by side, and the difference with the light behind it, you can tell there's the Repo is lighter. But if you saw this on a bar shelf, I don't think you'd be able to distinguish one from the other without reading the label.
Yeah, probably not. Now, I poured mine in my Stasso Jarrito that I normally use for mezcal, and I think Jim did also.
I did.
Beautiful golden color, man.
It really is. That's a very nice. I'm not even going to call it straw. I'm going to call it deep straw.
Straw.
It is dark. It is darker than most Repos that I typically see.
Well, now I told the story that we did a huge tasting of a lot of their brands when we first walked in there, and their tasting room is like a loft. It used to be in those days. I don't know if it's the same or not. I haven't been back since. But that loft looked over into their barrel room. It was open air. You know what I mean? You could look into it, and you can look at your barrel and look lovingly at all these barrels resting. And
It's like
So
that episode of Cheers where Norm tours the brewery.
I'm telling you now, I could tell you so many neat stories about that trip, that first trip to Mexico that we did with the Ian Chadwick Blue Agave Forum. It was the first forum to ever assemble 35 different people to take a tour of tequila distilleries when tours didn't exist. So I can tell you some wonderful, loving stories. I had somebody, we had walked into, just a group of us had walked into Arete, the small Arete distillery, and I said, I want to see your barrel room, which was across the cobblestone street in the heat. And as soon as he opened up, the doors were chained locked, the big wooden doors. And as soon as he opened the wooden doors, I got hit full in the face with the wood smell. And I was so stupid. I said, añejo. That's what I said, because I didn't know it. I had no descriptors, but it smelled like resting, like a rested añejo. So there's so many neat stories about that time that I'm eventually going to write about. But actually, I just have to go find my notes. Anyway, so the first big tasting we ever did, and the first distillery I ever walked in, was this one, Fábrica de Tequilas Finos. And I met Arturo Fuente, who is the master distiller and the plant manager. Very quiet guy. I wouldn't say he was too much of a people person, but he's a scientist. He's a chemical engineer. That's what he does.
He talks to the agave.
Yeah, he's all about the science, and very, very soft spoken in those days.
Oh,
but
wow.
I will say that I've talked to other brand owners who have their tequilas made there, and one thing that they always say is Arturo loves his legs. He loves his legs, his legs and tears.
This has the same spice as the Blanco.
Yep.
But it has mellowed, and it has taken that sweetness to that baked sweetness level where this is the tequila version of smelling warm apple pie.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, that aroma is so gently just pleasant.
Oh man. And I will confess that I was really excited when I got these bottles, and so I had to have a little bit of the Reposado, because I honestly can't remember if I ever had it way back then. So, and I was really glad that I had that you were the guy that was going to taste this with me, because I think you're going to have to walk me through what some of the finer points. Now, I didn't know, I hadn't even read the POS, because we get so many of these during the week that it's sometimes I don't even read the information until the very last minute right before we go on the air. So I did not know that they were resting them 364 days. That means I would imagine that the barrel, obviously it's a used barrel, but now this reminds me a lot of like I've got a lot of whiskey notes, and I'm kind of anxious to taste it with you right now, because I want to see if you're picking out the same thing I'm picking out. So let's dive in here.
Okay. Oh. Wow. Man, it's just the Blanco had the same thing. All the flavors were there, and they just kind of coasted right along. Nothing was too crazy. Nothing stood out more than the other. It was just kind of like, here's a nice flavor, here's a nice flavor, here's a nice flavor, long finish.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're okay. Now, am I getting bourbon notes out of this? Because it's not telling us the POS, the point of sale material, the flyer that we got with it, is not telling us, as far as I know, what sort of barrels, small oak barrels,
I would imagine they're used bourbon barrels.
I want to say bourbon. I was hoping that you would say that because not Jack Daniels, not whiskey barrels, but bourbon whiskey.
There's no sour mash in this at all. I think the sweetness comes from the floral sweetness of the agave, but I think the char is what's taking that spice note up a kick, right, but still keeping it mellow to the point where it's like that spice is there. It's definitely there, but it's not killer and it's not huge in any way, and it's just so nicely in tune with every other flavor profile that's in there. It's a little sweetness. There's some spice. There's just a touch of wood tannin for me that I get out probably off the barrel. And then there's a little bit of almost baked fruit to add to the sweetness.
Yeah. Almost like a dried fruit a little bit. I remember now again, I had this a couple nights ago in a snifter. I don't usually have it out of my tool set. I call them my tool set. The Stasel Jarritos. And in the snifter, I got, and then you and I have done enough of these tequilas together that I'm beginning to get way better at pulling out bourbon notes versus whiskey notes.
Right.
I remember this one finishing a little bit drier than almost like a really good bourbon, and that's kind of the way especially on the finish, I got more of that. And like you said, it's the char. It has to be the char is giving that little bit of dryness on the back end, and I love that. I honestly think, agree with me or not, I think this Repo would stand up with a cigar.
Well, I was just thinking about that, and I was thinking, do you do homage to the man by pairing it with an Arturo Fuente, maybe a Chateau or a Sun-Grown? But I think this would stand up very, very well to any kind of Habano.
Oh, really?
And you might even be able to take it into the Maduro category, and because I think the flavor profile here is so nicely combined that it's not going to overpower any element of the cigar, but the cigar is not going to drown out any of the individual flavors. They stand very well alone, but they kind of flow.
Okay.
They flow together. Honestly, I'd probably have a little short story, Arturo Fuente short story later on.
Oh yeah, yep.
One of these.
I've had them, and they're really good too.
This is just so nicely presented in terms of you got agave there. You pick up the barrel characteristics. You get the fact that what happened with the Blanco has now spent a year in that barrel. Mm-hmm. But none of it is like up on the marquee. This is the big thing that sticks out. And they're all enjoyable. It's all a nice symphony of stuff here.
There you go.
Great.
Symphony. I was going to go medley, but symphony's way bigger.
Symphony, medley. Do you know if they play Mozart to these barrels?
Well, they don't. As far as I know, they don't. But things may have changed. I got to say, Brand of Promise nominee.
Absolutely.
That is. I think that's a big, bold Reposado that doesn't that plays well with all the players. It's like a nice double play, man. 5-4-3.
Yeah, it is bold, but it doesn't slap you with any one flavor and say, hey, this is what it is. It's you still get a lot of good elements out of it that are all kind of standing by themselves, but they're on they just kind of flow along. I really like this stuff. This is good.
Yeah. And again, our thanks to R.S. Lippman for making that happen. They're out of Nashville, and again, I think that they chose not remembering what they did with the Repo or the Añejo in the old days with the old iteration. I think that they're bringing it in for that whiskey bourbon market, because I think you and I, if I'm not mistaken, I think you and I had TC Craft, which is also based in Nashville.
Yes.
So you're in Ohio, so you're not that far from whiskey bourbon country. So
right.
I think this is going to play really, really well in that market.
And just occurred to me that maybe the bourbon they're sourcing has a little bit higher rye in the mash bill, where that dryness comes in.
Maybe so.
Just a little. I mean, nothing crazy, but where, if bourbon sits in a barrel for 4+, 6+ years, those flavor qualities get in there, and if it's got a higher mash bill, you're going to get a little bit drier quality out of that wood that's been soaking. So I think this dryness has just a slight bit more rye in the bourbon side, but it definitely picks up some whiskey characteristics off that barrel. But it's nothing crazy. It's still tequila, and it's still great.
Yeah, and I think Arturo is a mad scientist. I think he has really outdone himself with the new version. These master distillers /
I'm gonna smoke an Arturo. I'm gonna sip on an Arturo. So later tonight, that's what I'm gonna do.
Oh my gosh! So anyway, that's our take on Cielo del Diamante, or El Diamante del Cielo. Excuse me, tequila, El Diamante del Cielo from 1472. That's Fábrica de Tequilas Finos and R.S. Lippman. Thank you again for making this happen. But stick with us because we have coming up the Añejo tasting, which I'm
giddy about now because now it's like this is going to be.
I haven't opened it, so I'm going to break my seal open, and then
Scotch boy's all happy now that this is going to taste like.
But anyway, stick with us. I'm Mike Morales here in San Antonio. That gentleman out there is
Jim Johnston in Youngstown, Ohio.
You have been watching and listening to Sipping Off the Cuff on Tequila Aficionado Media on all of our channels and networks. Don't forget to subscribe if you're listening to us, on Spotify, wherever you download your podcast, or if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the red button, subscribe, the notification bell, and hey, whatever you do, tomar sabiamente.
Sip wisely.